Introduction. In January of 2001, I was entering a state university for the first time in my life at the ripe age of 32. My relatively late life enrollment was the result of what I believed then was a misspent youth, and I was atoning for the indiscretions of what I call my rock star 20s. I had a lot of catching up to do, thanks to the decisions I'd made in my early and mid-20s, and a sense of incompleteness that I felt at the time. In hindsight, I'm glad I did return to school, better late than never, because I was learning the intrinsic value of an education. I can remember listening to the grumblings of guys in my class who were 10 years my junior saying, "What the hell do I need to learn this shit for? It will help me in my job I'm studying for. I suppose I might have felt the same way at 22 if I hadn't been more concerned with playing the next gig in the next band I was in on a weekend in Hollywood." I could never have appreciated the value of being an educated person. While a good job is definitely a concrete goal of bettering oneself, being educated on a great many subjects and learning how to learn is its own reward. Although I didn't attend a liberal arts university per se, my degree is in fine art. However, after having worked in design, advertising, marketing, and branding throughout my professional life, I knew that my minor, if later a double major, had to be in psychology. My initial interest in psychology was due to the want of a better understanding of the often difficult personalities I was forced to deal with in my career. So personality studies and behaviorism was a natural fit for me. Much of what I have compiled in this book is the direct result of over a decade of applying these schools of psychology to the gender dynamics I've experienced personally, as well as the collective experiences of millions of men around the world. Connecting dots. While I was studying psychology, I felt a natural attraction toward behaviorism. Like most people, I was peripherally familiar with the more touchy-feely branches of psychology, like psychoanalysis, and the sit down on the couch and let's talk about feelings applications most people associate with psychology. Behaviorism was a much more concrete approach, one based on behaviors and the motivators for them. One of the primary foundations of game awareness is basing your estimation of a woman upon her actions and behaviors rather than her words or implied intents. This principle is founded in behaviorism's cardinal principle. Behavior is the only reliable evidence of motivation. Even motivations not consciously recognized by the actor can influence the behavior regardless of a consciously rationalized motive. In other words, sometimes we don't realize why we're hypocrites or saints, as the case may be. Coming to terms with this behavioral foundation was the first dot I connected between hard psychology and intergender dynamics. For roughly a year or two before I enrolled, I'd been actively posting on a few online forums, attempting to help some young men with their girl problems. Initially, these forums weren't in any way related to what would later become the community or game-oriented in nature. I'd heard of the early pickup artists like Mystery and a few others, but they weren't promoting anything I hadn't already known from my more libertine rock star 20s. I was more interested in helping these guys not make the mistakes, for much of the same reasons, with women that I had. However, I just couldn't shake the feeling that there was a distinct connection between what these guys were going through, what the PUAs of the time were advocating, and the behavioral psychology I was becoming more and more saturated in. The average beta guys who were agonizing over their girlfriend problems and the behavioral basis upon which PUA techniques were founded on had a common root in psychology. About this time, I had joined the online community at sosuave.com. This forum would become my testing ground for connecting the dots I was beginning to become aware of. I should say that I did make an effort to propose that intergender relations were based in, sometimes harsh, behaviorism with colleagues and teachers. I was kind of taken aback more often than not when the same teachers who were promoting behavioral psychology as a hard science were the most outspoken critics of what I was bringing to light for them. I couldn't understand then what would possibly prevent them from connecting the dots and coming to the uncomfortable conclusions I was making. I know now, and you will too by the end of this book, but at the time, I hadn't figured out the influence the feminine imperative and romantic idealism had on their willingness to accept what I was proposing, in spite of their adherence to hard behaviorism. My inquiries and hashing out theories and ideas would have to be done on a forum where I could look for input, and maybe find that other men had concepts I hadn't considered, in a meeting place of similar ideas. So Suave was that forum for me for well over 12 years. Most of the concepts you will read in this book are the result of over a decade of debate, critical inquiry and refinement. However, in most cases, I still encourage their questioning, and none are unmodifiable or above further refinement. What you're about to read are a refinement of the core ideas and concepts I formalized on my blog, The Rational Male. I began The Rational Male at the request of my readers on various men's forums and comments on blogs in the manosphere in 2011. After the popularity of the blog exploded inside a year, it became apparent that a book form of the basic principles was needed for new readers as I moved past them and built upon the prior concepts. For the most part, I've rewritten and edited for publishing the blog post of the first year at Rational Male.